Welcome to Coaching with Confidence and Care podcast, inspired by common topics that arise in coach training, mentoring, and supervision. I am Dr. Luba Desamidze, the founder of Upthink Coaching. I'm an active coach trainer, mentor, and supervisor. If you are listening, you're probably looking to deepen your skills as a coach. I hope this podcast will be a helpful resource for you and contributes to your journey. Hi coaches! Today I'm going to have a very practical conversation with you on the topic of interruptions in coaching sessions. In my mentor coaching practice, coaches often wonder, what do I do when a client talks non-stop? How do I interrupt them politely? It is not uncommon to have a client who's a verbal processor and needs to talk something through to structure their thoughts. So, many coaches are curious whether they use an interruption as a tool in the best possible way, whether it's allowed or not allowed in coaching, and what it looks like when it is done well. As my coaching practice is aligned with the ICF standards, let me share a few guidelines from the ICF core competencies that relate specifically to interruption scenarios. First off, core competency 6 listens actively, which mentions interruption directly. One of the behavioral indicators under this competency explicitly states that the coach allows the client to finish speaking without interrupting unless there's a clear coaching purpose for doing so. And I have an interesting observation about this one. Many coaches only remember the first part of the phrase well. Coach allows the client to complete speaking without interrupting. And they miss the second part, which says, unless there's a stated coaching purpose to do so. Maybe sometimes they don't know what that coaching purpose could be. So this is going to be a big part of our conversation today. I'll also share some common questions and hesitations around that I hear from coaches and share some tips about overcoming them. Active listening is not the only competency that can guide your use of interruption as a tool. Let's take competency 3, for instance, coaching agreements. You can create very clear agreements around interruptions with your clients before you even begin the coaching sessions. That is, during the intake conversation. I often tell my clients very directly and respectfully, of course, sometimes in our coaching conversations, I may need to interrupt you. If I notice you are going in circles, drifting away from what you said you wanted to achieve, or heading down a rabbit hole. In such situations, I may choose to jump in with your permission to make sure that I can help you get back on track. Because as you speak, you may not be aware of those moments. Is that okay with you? How do you want me to interrupt you, verbally or non-verbally? See, I'm using this as an opportunity to partner with my clients. And most of my clients respond positively. They'll say, that's fine, just tell me to stop, or say enough, or give me a sign. In other words, they give me language they're comfortable being interrupted with. Another competency that applies here is competency 5, coaching presence. Coaching presence means being fully in the client's world, not controlling or directive, but responsive. And responsive means that you actually react, you respond verbally or non-verbally to what is happening in the session. Coaching presence doesn't mean you freeze and do nothing while keeping your eyes and ears open. It means that you are being responsive to what's happening, which includes noticing whether or not the conversation is going in the wrong direction or an unproductive direction for the client. Presence also means meeting the client where they are and not pushing your own agenda, not directing the client towards where you think they need to go, but being present allows you to notice that something that's happening is not serving the client, and you can gently intervene. Partnering behaviors are also part of presence. You step in and you remain considerate of your client. So wrapping up this part about the competencies, I want to say that interruption is an exception, not the rule. Of course, the default stance is always going to be deep, holistic, generative listening, and interruption becomes appropriate only when it advances the client's clarity or integration. So it's not really about whether you are allowed to interrupt. It's more about whether it serves the client's stated or emergent objective right now. Did the interruption serve the client? Did it deepen awareness, reconnect to purpose, or facilitate agency? Even with very talkative clients, when you use interruption as a learning intervention and help them notice a pattern, such as needing 5-7 minutes of explanation before landing the point, something may shift for them. As they become more self-aware of this communication style, which often mirrors their thinking style, you may see them start to trim it down. Over time, you may find you need to bring them back to the topic less and less. That said, this is not a rule. Do not turn interruption into a habit. Don't jump in every time, even if you feel the urge to rescue the session, or especially if you feel the urge to rescue the session. Evaluate critically when the right moments are. Coach listens first and only interrupts when it clearly helps the client's exploration or effectiveness. If your client is going in circles and it's unclear what the monologue is actually serving, naming that can be useful. When someone spends 3 to 5 minutes explaining something, they're often explaining it to themselves more than to you. What is it that they've been trying to explain? In this case, an interruption would help them to get centered. A well-timed interruption can help the client prioritize or move towards actions. Now let's look at some of the common questions that I get from coaches around interruptions. I guess all these questions can be subdivided roughly into a few different categories. The first category of questions is around appropriacy or the ethical side or the permission to interrupt. When coaches wonder, am I even allowed to interrupt? Does it mean that I'm not listening? Or is good coaching just avoiding interruption? Maybe that's going to look unprofessional. Well, as I already said, interruption can be a powerful intervention for the client as long as it's indeed done for the client, for the purpose that's serving the client. It's neither avoided nor overused. You need to strike a balance here. The ethical side of this may be that interruption may carry power implications. So stay conscious of hierarchy, culture, and psychological safety. Make sure that you interrupt with respect for the client's autonomy and pace, and their consent or permission becomes central. You can get their permission. Coaching is a partnership, so we try to avoid power imbalances in our sessions, and this means we do not put the coach's opinion in the spotlight. The focus is on strengthening the client's agency and self-efficacy, working with their potential and insight. Naturally, there can be concern that interrupting implies that the coach is deciding what is right or helpful in that moment. So use permission and be transparent. You can say something like, may I interject here? Is that okay if I pause you for a second? I'm noticing something important is emerging here. Or is that okay to pause you here? What feels most essential in what you're describing? Or you can say, I'm aware we may be circling a bit. What is the core point you want to land? Would it be okay to pause? You are saying a lot here. What are you not saying right now? The next group of questions is around the relational side of work. There can also be fear of damaging the relationship. Coaches may wonder, what if this breaks rapport? What if my clients shut down? Well, to this I want to say that relational depth does not mean that you are only engaging in positive strokes. The underlying mindset is one of unconditional positive regard, seeing the client as capable, creative, and resourceful. That is precisely why you consider them a suitable client for coaching in the first place. But relational depth at the same time includes or may include micro ruptures and repairs. Avoiding interruption to preserve harmony can create pseudo-safety and avoidance, maybe some hidden tension. Safety is maintained through transparency and making your good intentions, your positive intentions clear, not just staying passive. If interruption creates impact, that impact becomes material for exploration. And a coach remains regulated, curious, and open. So it does require some relational resilience. Of course, a big group of questions is always around the technical aspect of it, for the lack of a better word. It's about when to interrupt or what language to use while interrupting. So it's basically about interruption as a technique. I've shared some examples of interventions or what phrases you can say to intervene or to ask for permission to pause. And to the question about the right moment, what if you interrupt just before the insight? How long is too long? I think timing decisions are based on process signals, not some fixed rules, not your own impatience, not your own judgment or evaluation of the process that is not aligned with the client's. Experienced coaches track shifts in effect, repetition, energetic contradiction or expansion, alignment with the coaching goal. I'd also say it's important to develop a skill of a holistic, high-level listening, global listening, as I call it. When you listen, not to what just emerges in the conversation, but you listen to the overall development of the client's story. Imagine that you launch a drone in the sky, and from the screen of your smartphone, you can see the whole landscape and where your client is going. Without a drone, you are walking side by side with your client, watching their GPS screen. You are following your client closely, but you are seeing the same kind of landscape. You are in the same dimension. When you step back and see the bigger picture of the client's narrative, you can discern whether they're getting swept up in the story in a way that does not generate awareness or growth. At the same time, when they need space to elaborate, to think out loud, and they're moving forward in meaning making, that can be deeply productive. You don't have to interrupt them, so what you need to do is to hold space for them. And when you choose your language around interruption, remember that your tone will carry a lot of weight, not just the wording. And then the last set of questions, I guess, is around the coach's inner dialogue. Am I interrupting for the client, or am I interrupting just for me because I get bored or I can't tolerate a long story? The best guideline here is to stay connected with the contract for the session and the session goal. Interruption is justified when it reconnects the client with their intention. See, nothing here is about you. You're just the one holding the space and noticing how the conversation is going, and gently bringing this process to the client's awareness. You can actually self-check internally. You can ask yourself, is it about your discomfort? Do you want to intervene because you feel uncomfortable? Or do you see this as an opportunity to advance your client's learning? If you're unsure, which is okay, you can always partner with your client. Whatever internal reaction you're experiencing, treat it as an information, not as an instruction. Boredom, anxiety, or urgency, you feel them internally first. You can present your interruption as a process observation. You might say, I'm noticing you're repeating the same story, or I'm noticing you're starting to go in circles, or you've switched topics twice in the past 5 minutes. What is really happening here? In this way, it sounds quite a neutral observation and does not deliver a message to the client that their story is too long or maybe too boring for you, because clients might sometimes have this concern and they do not want to look awkward when they're trying to make sense. Well, there's still a possibility an interruption will not always land well. What's very important, focus on maintaining trust and safety. If your interruption constrains the client, acknowledge the impact directly and invite reflection. Apology may be appropriate when your client seems to be affected negatively. If you are not sure what happened, you can ask the client, what has just happened? You can explore the relationship between you and the client and not just avoid it, and use this recovery as a reconnection moment, as another opportunity to rebuild trust and create learning for the client. Well, that's all I wanted to share with you today. Do not be afraid to experiment. Coaching involves experimentation. It rarely happens by staying in your comfort zone. You can keep everything smooth and harmonious, but if you never step into the messy or uncomfortable edges, there may not be growth. It might preserve the relationship on the surface, but it may not move the client forward in any meaningful way. I hope that now you can see that in the professional coaching competencies, interruption is not a hard no, but it's an intervention that needs to be used wisely and skillfully. So it may take some practice, and most importantly, your readiness to keep working on your coaching skills. In the next episode, I'll talk about metaphors and how to actually work with them in coaching. When a client says, I feel stuck, or it's like I'm carrying the whole company on my back, what do you do with that? Do you follow it? Do you leave it? Do you deepen it? We'll look at how metaphors can open up insight very quickly and how they can also become a distraction if we get carried away. As always, new episodes come out every 2 weeks. In between, we alternate with our YouTube series, Conversations with Coaches, where we have honest, behind-the-scenes discussions with coaches from different niches about how they actually think and work. If you want to deepen your coaching, not in terms of tools, but in terms of reflective capacity and psychologically informed practice, our ICF-accredited programs open again in spring 2026. You can find all the details at upthinkcoaching.com. If something here sparked a thought, reach out on LinkedIn. I genuinely enjoy thoughtful exchanges. And if you're looking for a more focused space to think about your own cases and patterns, I work one-on-one through mentor coaching and supervision. All right, that's it for today. See you in the next episode.